We looked at the mirroring technique of block printing, which was literally flipping the block over. But now we're going to move on to the rotational technique, which is rotating the block and in different ways. First of all, I think we'll start with the 90-degree turn, and then we'll move on to the 45-degree turn. Now, one very good tip just to get started is, before you charge up your block with your paint, just go through it mentally. Just literally go through the whole process, have a dry run, because this can be slightly complicated and you really do need to consider about what you're trying to create. Now, you need to think about whether you're going to rotate these animal motifs on their nose or on their tail, and you also need to know what sort of gap you're going to be leaving.
Can the tips be touching each other as you rotate, or should we leave a gap?
I think it's up to you again. Really, I prefer the image to be very clear, so it's better if they're not quite touching, but almost touching. I have here an example of what you've just mentioned. This is a fish motif. Rebecca, what do you think is the rotation for this particular fish motif?
90 degrees.
Excellent. So we've got a 90-degree turn that's for this fish on his nose. Now there's another one here, and if you look very closely, Fazia, what do you think this is? Now this is a slightly more complicated rotation.
It's more of a 45-degree turn.
Exactly. Can you see? Because in fact what we've done is we did the 90-degree rotation first, and then in between the spaces we added in the extra motifs. So what I'll do is, if I just show you quickly how I did this. I'm going to give you a dry run, because I think sometimes it's better to actually mentally go through the thing, as I said before. So you've charged up your block, say. So you're going to print your first image there. Then you're going to rotate the block by 90 degrees. Then you're going to charge it again and give it another turn. You see that? And then finally, the last one like that. And that worked really, really well. Now, obviously, there are lots of variations of this process. And another tip that I think makes life a little bit easier, because you were talking about overlapping the images, you've got a 20p piece there. If you place a coin, any size coin, it doesn't matter, in the middle, then use that, oops, I can't keep it still, use that coin just to help you, just to get a little bit of a gap, because if all these fish were rotating on their nose, they'd end up kind of a bit of a congealed mess in the middle. So give it a turn. Do the 90-degree printing first. When you've done that, go again round in between to create the additional block printing. Okay, do you want to get started? And whilst you're doing that, I will just show you some examples of different rotation. Now here on the pink version, you can see that we've done a lot of fish there. It almost looks like a shoal of fish, doesn't it? And here again, we've got the symbols. Now these symbols, if you remember, we used for the mirroring, which was the flipping it over. But actually here, we've rotated them again. Can you see that?
Does it matter if the rotation goes off there?
No, I think that's part of the charm. No, absolutely not. Nothing really matters. I think the most important thing is that you just think about what you're doing and do it slowly and carefully and methodically, because you don't want to make a mistake at this stage. But if you do, you do, and it doesn't matter. Let's move on, and just, you know, sometimes it will add a little bit of character to your work. We've also got different rotations here. We've got this snake here that's rotating round. And there's also this one is slightly different, because actually the motif looks differently if you rotate it inwards as to outwards, because you see what I mean. I could have rotated it on the base, or I could have rotated it on the leaves. And I'm trying to, oh yes, and I just like to, here we are, we've got some more fish here. Now these fish, you were just saying, have slightly gone off the fabric, which I think adds to the charm. We've done some blue on one side, and we've done some red on the other side. And if you really want to get some depth into your work, I really recommend that you start off with a blank piece of fabric. Now we have here some lovely white nightshirts, and if you actually get a white item, a white article of clothing, a white piece of fabric, something like that, dye it yourself, because then you get the real colours that you want. And also then, you, as you can see behind me, we've got some turtles here which have been printed with the rotation technique. And I get more joy out of wearing a hand-dyed, hand-printed nightshirt than if I just bought one from a regular store. So again, it's all about having pride and joy in your work and enjoying your creative process. These are coming on beautifully. Now let's have a look at yours, Lucy. If you'd like to hold yours up to show everybody. Oh, that is lovely. Now you've done a rotation. Tell us exactly what you've done there. Hold it up a little bit more. Tell us what you've done, Lucy.
I've done a 90 degrees
Excellent.
rotation.
And you, how did you get it sort of with a gap in the middle?
I used a 20p coin.
You used a coin in the middle, and I can see Fauzi has got the point there beautifully. What to show us? Beautiful. And Rebecca, have you finished? That's really come on well. Now you've done the initial rotation. Now the difficulty is now to think about the next stage. Where do you go? Because you've got to then link them in. But listen, I'm going to leave you to get on with that rotation process. So we've been looking at a very systematic, structured way of creating patterns on fabric with the block printing. Now I'd like to move on to freestyle block printing.